and welcome to the Growth Whisperers, where everything we talk about is building enduring great companies, companies that last, companies that you're proud of and that the team are proud of. My name is Brad Giles, and as always, today I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. Kevin, hello. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Brad. We're in the middle of our summer and having an amazing time. Life is good. Life is very good. How about down there in Australia?
Same thing. Coming out of winter, and life is good. So let's move on to the thought of the day, word of the day. What do you got for us today, Kev?
Yeah, it's green lights. And listen to this amazing audiobook. Did a road trip down to California and back, had an amazing time. And then some of that, many hours, listened to a great audiobook by Matthew McConaughey, the actor. And it was just freaking inspiring. I won't tell you about the book. It's an inspiring story of his life, and create a lot of philosophical discussions for us and thoughts on life and all kinds of awesome things. But every time he came up against a challenge, and then all of a sudden there would be a breakthrough or almost like an affirmation from the world, or just something went well, he calls it, he go, green light, in his amazing voice, which I don't have like his. But his green lights, it was all celebrating these moments where doors open to the next level of the game of life. And it just makes me think about, green lights and all of the freaking amazing things that happen in this journey that we have, and the green lights that open up for us, and how we should just note them, think about them, be grateful for them, and then enjoy what that door opens. So green lights is just awesome, getting to the next level, and and worthy of celebration. That's it for me. How about you, Brad?
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't read that book, but I've skimmed it and it looks really good. So for me, are you looking in the mirror or are you looking in the window? So that's a phrase. I got to see Jim Collins last week, and awesome. He's really talking about responsibility. So when something goes wrong, are you looking in the mirror and saying, well, I did it wrong, it's on me? Or are you looking out the window and saying the team did it wrong, or this person did it wrong, it's on them? But equally and opposite, when something goes right, are you looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, it was all me, I did it right? Or are you looking out the window humbly and saying, yes, look how good the team did? So yeah, that I know that concept from before, but Jim was talking about level 5 leadership, and it was just a really good reminder of that.
Yeah, when we do talent reviews with teams, we use 7 questions from Jim, and that's one of them. And really, if they're more of the window person when things go wrong, that's almost a fatal flaw for them to be on our teams. If we can't fix it, we generally have to exit them. Interesting. So this sews together in terms of these 2 concepts, is that we have, if you're more likely to look into the mirror and reflect and learn, I think you're going to end up with more awesome green lights in your world, right? Looking out the window when things go wrong leads to red lights. Looking in the mirror leads to green lights. Awesome.
Let's move on.
Let's do it. So today we got a really interesting topic, and we have an interesting topic now in our mind most weeks, but today is one that we come across a lot. I had a conversation with the CEO about this last week, and this is about change and what to do when your team resists change. You've got a great idea that's an improvement for the company in some way, but you feel like you're dragging the team, almost like when you're trying to take a dog for a walk that doesn't want to walk, and you feel like you're dragging it down the sidewalk, which we've had to do with my kid's dog a few times. He has I've got an awesome dog. Baker is a dog. He's a great dog, but every time, once in a while, he decides he doesn't want to walk and he lies down on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And then many times that happens with our teams, is they just lie down. They're like, we're not standing for this.
And you as the leader, you're saying, but this is a great idea. Like, I know it's going to work. It's brilliant. Why are you being so obstructive? I don't get it.
Yes. It's like, I've been working on this for months and working it out and thinking it through and validated. I know it's an awesome idea, and you don't.
Yeah.
And hence, in what I just said is the key. Yes, you have been thinking about this for months and working on it for months, and you have had plenty of time to get your head around it. There, Well, they're at ground zero. You've talked about it 14 times for 4 hours or 14 hours, and we forget. And it's not that the idea isn't good, but there's a process where you take an idea from being, unacceptable to oh, okay, I think there's something here, and you work your way through an idea. Well, they're at the beginning. They're like a child learning to ride a bike for the first time, and you're asking them to go ride up and down a mountain, and they can't even get the pedals figured out.
Yeah. So an example of this might be if I said to you, Kev, we're going to switch the podcast from weekly to daily, and we're going to record it at 6 a.m. every day, and it's going to be awesome. Let's do it. But you haven't.
No matter how good that could be a brilliant idea, but I'm going to initially resist unless it's something I already wanted.
Yes.
And odds are it's a new idea that you're trying to get into people's heads. So this is the idea of what do you do when your team resists change? And the reality is we're supposed to be change masters in our roles. So there's a number of great books by an author named John Kotter, and he has his 8 steps of change, and we'll talk through that a little bit today. But the main thing I learned about a decade ago when I learned his principles, because I don't know about you, if the team resists, I'm about as persistent as a bulldozer with infinite fuel. I'll just keep going. I'm not going to stop. But it creates a lot of tension and destruction in a way of getting to the outcome. So what Kotter says, and I think about this a lot, and we do a lot of this with teams, like when a change isn't working, we can go and run through the 8 steps, or before we do it, ideally, we go and plan based on his 8 steps. But the biggest thing is that initial buy-in. And if you don't create the urgency or don't get that buy-in, they're not going to do it. So one of the things he explains really clearly is that when it comes to change, and you're trying to shift someone's perspective, unfortunately, most of our decisions are emotionally based. And executives or leaders try to justify things logically. So you've got an emotional problem because people have emotions like fear or anxiety or distrust. They have all these emotions that are fired up when you want to talk about a change and how it's going to affect them. And this isn't right. This isn't fair. You're trying to take away power, or you're trying to give an unfair amount of work to me, whatever comes up for them. It's all emotional reactions generally. But we have this emotional problem, then we take a logical solution. And we wonder, so first of all, sometimes we don't even know that there's a problem, and we're just pushing ahead, wondering why everyone's falling behind and not with us. 2, even if we do, when we realize the problem, we take a logical approach, and then we've got double trouble.
It's like
they weren't with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like oil and water. You can't get emotional problem solved via logic. You've got to stop and go to the emotions. There's a phrase that I like to say: the team who build the plan don't fight the plan. And so you've got to get the team on board in building the plan.
Yes. So in one of Kotter's examples, and I love his book, he has this book called Our Iceberg is Melting. It's a story about penguins. I don't think I have it in front of me right now. It's a story about penguins, and it's a cartoon book. It looks like a kid's book. Now, he has a book called The Heart of Change and a bunch of other deeper, hardy intellectual books. But we use the penguin book. There's a book that used to be a great book about change. It's a bit dated now, but it's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
But his iceberg book is way better than Who Moved My Cheese. In my mind, it's outstanding. We've used it with hundreds and hundreds of leaders in different companies. And it's a story about a penguins whose iceberg is actually melting. But would it actually, and it's all the different characters which kind of show the different approaches that people take, but it's about, what it actually took to mobilize the team and get it going. And in the story, and the simple essence is they had the professor, they call him in it, who tried to explain to people what was happening scientifically. He had charts and data and spreadsheets, and everyone's like, well, And in the end, they got a guy, I believe his name was Fred, who kind of was the ringleader on a bunch of this stuff. and it was Fred. I think it was Fred was the ringleader who got it going. But the guy that they got to persuade and get the whole group of penguins behind this, the whole community, was the guy who was the salesman. I'll remember his name in a moment. He was the best salesman in the group. And he got up there and charmed people and moved their emotions and got them to buy into it with some, I won't tell the whole story, but basically they used a very smart approach, which fell into Kotter's 8 steps. So there's a great example he has in one of his books about centralizing procurement. So imagine you're a company with 10 factories around the country, whether you're in Brad's country, Australia, or in North America, where I am. And imagine that you all have your independent pieces and all the procurement people are doing a great job in their mind, but then head office wants to centralize it and centralize all the buying. So as soon as the procurement team hears about centralizing the buying, what can you expect is going to come up? They're not going to be excited.
No.
You're going to be taking away their power, taking away their authority. Those blah blah blah, those jerks, or whatever, corporate, whatever they call corporate. There's going to be all these stories about centralizing it and whether or not they like the person, but it takes away their importance, their power, their authority, all this stuff, which is predictable. It's not surprising. No different than if you took it from corporate and decentralized it. The corporate people are going to feel that way because you're taking something away from them. It's human nature. They're not bad people. But basically what they did is that the leader in charge was very smart, and he had all the procurement people in for a meeting at head office, and on a boardroom table he had a big pile of gloves. Now the meeting was supposed to start at 8:30, but he artificially told them the meeting started at 8, so they'd be there early. And on each pair of gloves had a piece of paper stapled to the glove with a location, name, and a price. So you will imagine that of all these different pairs, they'd have like San Jose, $17, and then they would have, Parsippany, and it would be $3. And they're the identical gloves because they use the same gloves in their manufacturing facility. So what happened is the prices range from 3 to 17, in the story. And by the time the leader came in, someone's like, by gosh, we need to centralize procure. We need to work together here. We're getting ripped off by our suppliers. This isn't right. We could save tens of thousands of dollars, but we got to work together and don't let the supplier screw us anymore.
Yeah.
Because emotionally, it was embarrassing. For some, it was exciting. For others, it was embarrassing, but it was a travesty to the company.
And the team built the plan. I go back to the team that build the plan, don't fight the plan. We've got to get that emotional buy-in.
Exactly. So the idea here, and we'll walk through Kotter's 8 steps, but the essence is you've got to get people buying in. So another example is we were doing an acquisition, and in the market we were in, we were number one, and we dominated, like to the point where we were aggressive and really hurt competitors. This competitor was relieved that we purchased them. But we also know that in this battle, we were the bad guys. They were relieved because we were going to kill their business. But at the same time, we were evil in their mind. So we had to create an activity to get them buying into, because they had some amazing talent. Even though we beat them in the market, they did have some awesome people we wanted to retain. So we created a very special event, and this was in a very tropical location, a very special event where we brought people together and we engineered who sat with each other. And we went through some things, doing some exercises to basically bond the team, create human connections. Of course, we talked about our plan and what we were doing as a company and how they were a critical part. But most of it was emotional bonding, getting them to go from being a foe to being a friend, and making sure that people made deep connections. And basically the whole focus of it was to get to know those people. And we engineered a whole bunch of activities. So then they became excited about, oh, these people aren't jerks. We want to be a part of this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to get that emotional buy-in. I'm sure going back to that, the CFO, no disrespect to our good CFO friends, could have gone out there and explained all of the merits of the transaction. The CFO or even the CEO could have gone out there and said, this is why we're doing it, and you've got no choice in it, but this is why it economically makes sense, and these are all of the facts and all of the data, and it would be just, again, like oil into water. Like, it just won't work. It just doesn't mix.
Exactly.
Start with the emotions when you need to enact change.
Exactly. The one that we were able to stop because of other ones, but in IT systems, it's a nightmare. Generally, the stats I've heard is most ERP solutions and CRMs would be similar. There's about a 50% failure rate. And these things in large companies are tens of millions of dollars. It's a massive failure rate. You know what percent of time the software doesn't work? It's next to zero.
Yeah.
It's a failure rate because people are used to doing things one way, and then they're asked, the system requires them to do a different way, and they resist the change.
Yeah.
Like, it's because they haven't bought into the change, and they're often not educated enough on the system. But I'll give you a really bad example. So we had a company that did a Salesforce implementation. I think they were about $10 million into it across the whole platform, and Salesforce salespeople are brilliant, and you can do this and you can do that. They had all the bells and whistles. And the IT guys, I think they were thinking that they were going to get the equivalent of an Academy Award for their performance of building the system. And they were doing all the coolest stuff that IT guys and gals could do. It had all the cool stuff. The vendors gave them an award for it, which I've learned is a dangerous sign. But the root of it is they built this brilliant system without the operators.
Yeah.
Well, the operators are the users, are the people that use it. And they thought they knew best. So you go and design this system for millions of dollars with all this cool, sexy stuff that makes you loved by the vendors and up for awards for innovation. But the reality, the people who are going to use the system aren't involved. And you basically build a complicated, sexy, but stupid system that's ineffective. So when they rolled it out, even if it was perfect, but when they rolled it out without any involvement, of course people are going to resist because it's your system, not mine. On top of it, they made a whole bunch of horrible choices. And again, after $10 million, after trying to roll it out, it was a flawed system. Although technically cool, they put it in the bin and started again. They threw it away. $10 million and months of people's time because they just didn't get people's buy-in. Had another company, and I got so many examples of this stuff, but they were just about to roll out a new payroll system. I'm in a meeting in the boardroom, and they said, and because to watch this, well, no, we got, because they're a company with mobile technicians that are in the field, and the CEO's super smart guy, but his head of operations was in charge of this, and I happened to be with them both. I said, okay, great. So have you battle tested? So basically, it was a system on the phone to manage all of the text time. So it's really cool and slick and how it goes into the billing system for the customers. It's all amazing. But so they were excited about the internal efficiencies. So I said, well, how many techs have you had battle testing this? And the head of operations is like, none. Okay. How much time have you spent educating the techs about the new system? Oh, they don't even know it's coming. And this is a national company. And I asked about a half a dozen more questions, and I'm like, okay, so I can pretty confidently tell you what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to have an absolute nightmare. They are going to reject it like a virus because they haven't been consulted. You're asking technicians who are used to doing things on pencil and paper to do everything digitally. Yes, I know it's very convenient for you, head office. From a corporate perspective, it'll be brilliant. It's just not going to roll.
Yeah.
So I said, and this is rolling out in 10 days. I said to the CEO, I said, hey, it's your calls, but from my perspective, this is going to be a catastrophe, predictably. And I pulled out the 8 steps of Kotter, and we talked about it because you have no buy-in. It's hard enough to in the first place. Anyways, long story short, they held off 3 months, then went through, used Kotter's 8 steps, and then it rolled out just fine. So it's although it's not rocket science, it's just that they had been working on it. They've been working on it for 6 months. They were so convinced that it was so good that they forget that the other people haven't even heard of it and are at zero.
And it's unmitigated disaster if you don't follow this logical framework. So I want to bring us back to, first of all, relative podcast episode that we've done, which is 114. CEOs must become meeting masters.
Yep.
So the CEO only has one tool. That's episode 114. So let's maybe step through these 8 steps, no pun intended there, in Kotter's change model. So first up, we've got creating urgency. So the first step is creating a sense of urgency about the need for change. Going back to the example that you just provided, the end users didn't even know that it was coming. So there was definitely no sense of urgency. So we've got to make sure that that the people understand there's a problem. We'll go back to the gloves example. Yeah. Those executives walked into that room. They saw all the gloves with the different prices. They understood the problem, and that created the urgency.
Yes. So again, easy to do, but it's usually the step where people fail.
Yeah.
Because the executives are so far down the road, or the team leader, and they forget to bring the team with them and warm them up again. Second is put together a team. Once we get the organization ready and feeling the need to make a change, pull together a team of people who are going to start to work on it. And often, like in that company with technicians, I said, who is your most senior and or influential technician? Get him or her, right? Who is your biggest naysayer? Get him or her. Because if you got your most influential and your biggest resistor, involve them in it up front, and you will end up with a better plan, because their idea, even the resistors' ideas, can often be valuable.
Yeah, people who build a plan don't fight it.
Exactly. And then develop the vision and strategy. Okay, what's the vision of what we're going to do and the strategy to get there? Once people are on this path, that's fairly normal. But then communicate that vision.
So that's just for the points, Kev. Sorry. So you've just gone through a few there. I just, for the listeners, want to make sure. So number 1 is create urgency. Number 2 is put the team together. Get the person who's most and least influential or the biggest critique. Number 3, you said there was develop a vision and strategy. Like, what will be the compelling thing that we're working towards? Yeah. Number 4, communicate. Communicate the change vision. I love this one because there's another article from HBR. I forget the title, but what they basically say in there is that leaders often under-communicate by a factor of 10. Yep. And so I always say, when I say communicator, I'm always saying over-communicate. Like, you've got to over-communicate so people really understand. So communicate the change in vision is number 4 here.
Yeah, and to share that and rally the team. Often people will come up with a project name, or a theme around it to kind of get people to grab onto that. Now, you got to make sure number 1's in place, they're bought in. Otherwise, just having a theme isn't that effective. But it gives people focus and gets people excited about what we're trying to achieve. Number 5 is just to remove obstacles. There will be all kinds of issues. And one of the big things within removing obstacles is to get everyone a job to do. Like, try and get as many people as you can having jobs in it, so it goes wide throughout the organization if it's an organization-wide initiative. Have strong short-term goals that you continue to have them and are able to celebrate them and be able to get people excited about what happens. Like, you need to pre-engineer the wins. Like, as in, you need to say, okay, because in the middle of it, you're in the heat of the battle and you forget. And so positive things in this world get a lot of celebration and accolades. So you've got to pre-engineer it and plan for all the little celebrations, all the little points of confidence and affirmation that we're doing the right thing.
That's number 6, set short-term goals. We've got to make sure that there are these milestones along the way. So A, we know we're progressing, and B, like you said, we can kind of celebrate those goals as they occur. Number 7 is keep the momentum. We've got to make sure we're working toward that goal.
Yeah, and there's gonna be issues and frictions that happen in the organization, and you just got to be willing. And this is where you might use a little bit of the bulldozer to push through. You still have to be able to push through. And then finally, number 8, make the change stick, is to try and then build it into your culture that you continue to change, because cultures get stagnant where nothing changes. So always trying to keep a little bit of change happening so people are also used to change and becoming an organization that's effective with change. Again, not too much, not too little, just the right amount.
I love that. Cultures get stagnant when nothing changes. That's awesome.
Yeah. So the essence of this, look, it's we've all had the experience where we feel like we're dragging people, and generally it's our fault, not theirs. There's nothing. Initially, there's not necessarily anything wrong with them. And even your biggest critics, initially, they'll provide good feedback to improve your thinking. Now, once the decision is made and we're pushing ahead, those people need to get in line and support. But it's our job to make it easy for them to get in line. And if you follow these steps, you've got a dramatically better chance of doing it well. It doesn't mean that the change disappears. It just means you understand what's going on and you know what you need to do to get there. And last story I'll share with you. About 10, a little over 10 years ago, my partner and I was thinking about moving probably 14 years ago, but about 10-ish years ago, I really wanted to move. And I finally moved, but the 14 I started, but I couldn't get them convinced to move. Like there was no, I was like, I was, younger in my career. I wanted the big house and the big property and all those kinds of things, but they didn't want to leave the place that we were in. And one day, and it took me a long time, I didn't understand this stuff. I would do it much faster next time. But one day they made a comment about how the kitchen, when we had friends over, the kitchen just had some core issues with the kitchen. And then it hit me. And then I was like, yeah, that's horrible. That's just not right. We must change that. We deserve better. But they had dissatisfaction with the kitchen, which opened up there was now a reason to move, where before everything was fine. There was no reason to move. And that's what creating urgency or getting buy-in. You've got to find that little thing that really rallies people and touches on a chord that either, whether it's fear or anxiety or dissatisfaction or whatever it happens to be, then you can start to make the change.
Which is create urgency. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. What do you do when your team resists change? So people can often, leaders, make changes in a business or in an organization without necessarily the buy-in of others, and that can lead to ineffective execution or resistance. So as I've said several times, the team who build the plan don't fight the plan. We've got another podcast, episode 114, which is CEO has only one meeting. It's relevant to this. So let's go through those 8 steps of change quickly. I'll go through the first 4, Kev, and then I'll ask you to close it out from there. So step number 1 in Kotter's change model, create urgency. The first step is to create a sense of urgency about the need for change. We've got to appeal to the emotions and not the facts. Number 2 is to put a team together. Make sure that team encapsulates the influential people, and it also encapsulates, or it captures, the critics, so that everyone has a stake in the outcome. Number 3, develop the vision and strategy. If we do this, where are we going to be? What's going to be better? What will be different? How will we improve our situation? And number 4, communicate the change vision broadly to the people in the organization. Kev, do you want to walk us through the back end of the 8?
Yeah, then remove any obstacles that come up, because they will. Set short-term goals to achieve so that you can have lots of celebrations of accomplishment. And when you do hit resistance, find a way to keep going, push forward, because there will always be a bit of that, but just do it smartly, going back to the buy-in up front. And then make the change stick and try to make it part of your culture. And as Brad kind of highlighted, when not a lot of changes in the business gets stagnant, and you want to keep the change and constant improvement piece alive. Awesome. Great conversation. It's such a passionate topic. I just, and it's like, you don't know what you don't know. When you don't understand this is what's going on, you think people are crazy, when in reality, you just haven't done your job well. you just didn't know. So thanks for listening. This has been the Growth Whisperers podcast with myself, Kevin Lawrence, in Vancouver, Canada. Actually, today in Peachland, British Columbia, where I am, not in Vancouver. And Brad Giles down in Perth, Australia. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe button, and you're welcome to give us a great rating if you're thrilled with what we're doing. For the video version, go to youtube.com and just search the Growth Whisperers. Brad has an awesome newsletter that he puts a lot of work into, and you can get that at evolutionpartners.com.au, and you can also find out more about what he does. And our firm as well has a newsletter, goes out every week. Lots of great ideas, content, and things that we like to share. And that's lawrenceandco.com. Have an awesome week, and good luck being more successful getting people to follow you when it comes to change. Have a good one.